Hey y'all! Today we're going to talk about how the Imperium keeps track of time, or rather doesn't. I won't delay. Please feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and you can find things like my Discord or Patreon in my link tree. Let's get right into it. To start, the Imperium of Man has a great many logistical headaches with its empire. The simple fact of the matter is that it has more worlds than it really knows what to do with, and the tides of the warp make travel times lengthy and inconsistent. In fact, for many ships, it is impossible to track how much time has passed, or even reversed in rare cases, during their travels. This means that many human worlds in the galaxy may have to account for extended periods of silence from the outside galaxy, or still, the Administratum struggles to keep track of each individual planet. A single stroke of a pen could result in a star system being flat out forgotten for centuries, left to rot and decay on its own. To top all of that off, the Imperium has a vast history, and humanity's overall history is even greater. Between all of the inconsistencies, all of the struggles, all of the headaches, the Imperium has had to develop its own unique way of measuring time, the Imperial dating system and Imperial calendar. They are the same thing, but for the sake of this video, I am going to make a slight difference during explanations, but again, they are the same thing. The imperial calendar is loosely based on the Gregorian calendar, meaning the measurement of years and dates would somewhat line up if we put the two together. The imperial dating system, which has the imperial integrated within itself, is rather convoluted, and not gonna lie, it's gonna get confusing. So here we go, I'm going to give you a breakdown of this system. Let's start with this number on screen. You can break this into 4 parts: the check number, the year fraction, the year, and the millennium. We're going to go from right to left. M41 stands for Millennium 41. A millennium is equivalent to roughly 1,000 years. Warhammer is set in 40,000, hence the name 40k. You might be wondering, why is it not called M40? Well, remember, this is based on the Gregorian calendar. From year 0 to the end of year 99, you have Millennium 1. Here in 2023, we are in the 3rd millennium. So, in 40k, it is M41. Alright, 42. This is also simple. This is the 42nd year of M41. And you will notice that most states in 40k just use these 2 sections. In a book, you would just see year 42.M41. How about the other 2? Well, 690 represents the year fraction. Each year is divided into 1,000 equal parts. The reason for this is that it is meant to not rely on solar months or weeks. This part of the system is not used in your day-to-day. It is strictly used for administrative purposes by governing bodies like the Adeptus Terra. Now, nerds, we gotta do some math. Each increment of the year fraction corresponds to 8 hours and 45 minutes on Terra. So, let's take a day. As of writing and recording this script, it is November 13th, 2023, the 317th day of the year. Okay, let's split that into hours. 317 times 24 equals 7,608. Then we need to multiply that number by a thing called the maker constant, which is 0.1140795. I hope you're still with me, because it only gets worse, but don't worry, it also gets better. So, 7,608 times the maker constant. The answer is 867.917216. So, now we have to round that number, and we get 868. The year fraction is 868. Here is the formula. D times 24 times the maker constant. D standing for the day. Now, you could be more precise. If you want the exact hour, then you would have to add an extra step. Let's say an event occurs on the 8th hour of the 317th day. Then you would multiply the previous day, 316, by 24, and then add 8. So, 316 times 24 plus 8 times the maker constant. Translate that into a formula and you get this. D standing for the previous day, H standing for the hour of the day. You may be wondering why we add the hour of the day, and that is because d times 24 gets you the number of hours up to second 0 of the next day, which is why you need the additional hours. So going back to our original number, we have 3.690.42.m41. So what about this last bit here? Oh boy. Alright, the 3 is the check number. A check number is meant to indicate how accurate the source of a date is. Why? Well, the simple fact of the matter is that the warp is a fracky wacky, and that makes accurately recording events tough. As a result, Terra is used as the standard time, and everything is done in reference to that. In other words, you are basically asking, was that source in direct contact with Terra? If not, what was it in contact with, and is the interim contact able to accurately communicate with Terra? The check number is labeled from 0 to 9, class 0 to 9. There's only one source with a check number of 0, that being Terra itself. A source with a check number of 1 is located within the Sol system. So, as an example, Mars would have a check number of 1. How about a check number of 2? Well, a class 2 source of a record was in direct psychic contact with Sol when the date reference was made. Let's say you are an astropath who happens to be communicating with another astropath on Terra or Mars. The both of you have referenced the date, and now you can record things accurately. Terra can reliably confirm the date is accurate because it was in direct contact with the source. A class 3 is an indirect source. So basically, an astropath from a class 3 talks to a class 2, which relays the message to a class 1 or Terra. There may be some inaccuracies, but for the most part, things line up. Class 4, a corroborated source, talks to a class 3. Class 5, sub-corroborated, is in contact with a class 4. This is where you will start to see some noteworthy discrepancies. Class 6 is where things really start to get convoluted. It is a non-referenced 1-year source. The source of the date is not in contact with a 0 to 5 when the reference is made, but it does somewhat line up with the continuity of a class 0 to 5 source. Class 7 is non-referenced 10 years. It is the same as a class 6, but with a greater time span to allow for a larger discrepancy. Class 8 is the most egregious, non-referenced 11 plus years. So it is the same as 6 and 7, but it can be 11 years or more, like a century or a millennium. These are a lot more common than the Imperium would like to admit. Class 9 is just straight up guessing. Approximation. Basically, a planet has either been isolated for so long that it developed its own calendar, or it lost track of time and it literally has to make an educated guess as to what the date for an event is. This is also more common than the Imperium wants to admit. So, going back to the original number that I gave you all, check 3, fraction 690, year 42, millennium 41. The event was recorded and reported by an indirect source that could be verified by a direct source, and the estimated date is fraction 690 of year 42 of millennium 41. So, if your brain is melted, guess what? We're not done, because the Imperium not only has an entirely separate and new system, it no longer even knows what the damn year is. Have you ever thought to yourself, say if Cadia fell in 999 M41 and the Indominus Crusade was at the start of M42, why does something like Darktide, set during the Indominus Crusade, say it's the 41st millennium? Well, that's because the Imperium isn't just bad at recording history, it actively purges and rewrites it. An already messy dating system, made inaccurate by the tidings of the warp, was made infinitely worse by edicts of obliteration and revision units. Humanity now knows less of its own history than when the Emperor was still unifying Terra. When Primarch Roboot Gilliman returned, one of the first things he did was make attempts at piecing together Imperial history in an accurate manner, a borderline impossible task. He created the Logos Historica Verita. Sorry for the mispronunciations, I'm bad at that. Charging it with the task of cataloging all of humanity's lost and ongoing history. And as Gilliman continued to investigate, he actually discovered that the subject of the date was the catalyst for a civil war within an Ordo of the Inquisition. The Ordo Chronos, tasked with figuring out the effects of warp travel on the passage of time, grew so bitterly divided that it ignited a civil war known as the Chrono Strife. When Gilliman himself tried to calculate the date using every single source he could, he discovered that the galaxy was either in the early 41st millennium or an entire millennium later. In other words, nobody actually knows the year, and it will likely take the Primarch some time before he can come to a remotely accurate conclusion. And it only gets worse, because now the Cicatrix Maledictum, this great big thing and all of its accompanying warp tears, is creating distortions in time. If there was even a slight chance of unifying the calendar before, it is quite literally impossible now. No matter what anyone, including Gilliman himself, does, there is no way to make an accurate calendar at this moment in time, meaning the Imperium has had to nearly abandon it. The Era Indominus dating system was born as a result. This system took advantage of the one single constant throughout the entire galaxy, the Great Rift. If the passage of time was experienced differently everywhere, fine. Just break apart the system, keep the years a millennium, and rely on local reports using the birth of the Great Rift as the starting point for everything. How does it work? Well, we have to look at the chronology of Vigilus. The Vigilus timestamp is firstly comprised of the annual designator, its anchor point, the opening of the Great Rift. It starts with the number of Terran years before or after the rift opened, and then the chronosegments within that year as the second element. One chronosegment equals 8 solar hours. Then you have the third element, previo or post. So, to take that confusing ass word vomit and put it into practice, a chronosegment is 8 hours. Let's say that an event took place 1 year and 2 Terran rotations before the birth of the Cicatrix Maledictum. Well, you would have the date 1.6 Previo Vigilus Cicatrix Maledictum Millennium 41. 1 for the year and 6 for the chronosegments. 1 year, 6 chronosegments before the Cicatrix Maledictum. So, 1.6 Previo VCM.M41. Let's say it took place 1 year and 2 days after. Well, 1.6 post VCM.M41. Confusing? Yeah. But you know what? I'm going to make your life easier, because I'm going to make a free template for you all to use when coming up with the times for your own headcanons, mini battles, or stories. You'll be able to find it on my Instagram when this video goes up, and patrons who sign up will get some bonus stickers surrounding the theme of time being crazy. No, it will not be Warhammer themed. It will be completely legally distinct. I don't want GW hounding for me. I will see you in the cosmos, friends.